opportunity to provide their inputs. Now, I don't know if everybody has seen the second draft of the bill, and it's entitled the Substitute Bill. And in that bill, some of the inputs that have been received subsequent to the public hearing were incorporated. And some of that, for example, would include, like in Section 2, initially the bill called for the authorization of a long-term public-private partnership contract for a base period of 5 years and 3 5-year options to renew. And the change that has been made is to basically authorize GRTA to enter into a public-private partnership for a total period of up to 20 years. Now, the way that can be taken then is that it's when that task force is formed, they would then decide whether to have a contract with a base period of 5 years, with 3 options to renew up to 20 years, or basically enter into a 20-year contract. And if the contractor does not perform along the way, then at that point you can come back to the table to discuss that. So what we're looking at doing is to provide as much flexibility to the task force and to have the bill basically provide the direction and broad parameters as to how the task force should operate. The bill also initially required that the investor finance implementation, it says at a minimum, GRTA's transit business plan, and of course, as we further our discussions, we need to explore whether we want to really set that transit business plan that was adopted in 2010 as the minimum, and then proposers can come in and either say I can do that plus other additional items, or to simply say here's information that can be used to guide prospective offerers to be able to basically craft their proposals. So I don't know if you all have had a chance to look at the substitute version of the bill, and that's the one. It says bill on the front page. It says bill number 85-33, and on the second line it says as substituted by the committee. So that's the most recent version that has incorporated. Now, we didn't come here for you to listen to me talk. I came here to listen to your inputs based on, I'm sure you've given more time to think about this particular issue, and we'll receive those. Thank you, Senator Spaldon, for joining us. I want to say that also Senator Spaldon has, since he's in his previous term, was very supportive and was very interested in trying to move along the public transit project. So we're going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and okay, yeah. But I was going to start because I think some of you had to leave early. Okay, so because there's a number of us, and so we're going to go ahead and we'll go around, and if we need more time, we'll go a second round. But I'm going to kind of limit the discussion from each person so that everybody will have a chance to provide their inputs. Okay, so maybe if we'll limit it to 5 minutes, which is a long time, and then we'll go around the table and we'll go a second round, however many rounds it takes. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll start with Evelyn Duenas. Hold on. Yeah, because we're recording the session, so.
Holiday Center Ada and committee members. I am Evelyn Duenas, and I participate. Thank you for allowing me to participate and giving me the opportunity to participate in the roundtable discussion on Bill 85-33. I am currently not in support of the entire bill. I am here to support what we currently have now, which is Public Law 30-05 that created the Guam Regional Transit Authority. What we need is more support in staffing and funding GRTA. Staffing and funding. GRTA was created due to the abolishment of the former Guam Mass Transit Authority. The abolishment of GMTA created a fiasco for the public transportation when it was placed as a division under the Department of Administration. There were some improvement when it became GRTA. There was more control over the operation. A few more staff were added, and a dedicated executive manager was hired. Under the direction of the executive manager, Mr. Rick Augustine, the staff was provided with guidance and direction. In my opinion, I find Mr. Augustine responsive to problems occurred by the provider, and he has definitely made progress on procurement for vehicles and operations. Mr. Augustine has done extensive research regarding the agency, including the potential finances of GRTA, finding that much of the funding belonging to GRTA has been disbursed to other agencies. Here we are continuing with hearings and roundtables trying to fix a very old problem that has never been appropriately funded. If you wanted to go into a private partnership to save the government money, we have never saved money through the route that the current service has been contracted for the last decade. The government has not saved any money, but the expenses has grown greatly in the last 5 years. Without any progress or improvement in drivers' incentive, vehicles, repairs, or buses, or other services, there has been a reduction in quality of service. The transportation has never been a priority to our leaders or lawmakers. I appreciated your support and concerns in the past years, but this issue of funding and fully staffing the agency continued to be a problem. I do not believe that privatization will solve this problem. We have been in contracts with private enterprises for more than a decade, and the problems remain. I support the portion of Bill 8533 that addresses the means of procurement. It allows flexibility in navigating with a contractor for enhancing transportation to a better quality of service. I also support the added years of contractual service because it can provide stability of service with expanded with service and will expand the number of proposers. I do not support removing any authority from GRTA. You cannot fix what is not broken. GRTA is not broken, but it needs major assistance and support. The entity has a funding source, but due to the carelessness of leaders and lawmakers, it has been scattered to many different agencies, none of which provides transportation services. This left GRTA without the proper financial support. This is an ongoing problem that the administration and lawmakers have basically ignored. What you can do is find funding that others funding. What you can do is find funding others than the mass transit funds to supplement those agencies that are not related to transportation. Let's continue to bring this progress forward and work together as a team and bring transit to the level that it should be. Let's not repeat the past. GMTA was brought has actually bring transit to the level that it should be. Let's not repeat the past. GMTA was actually doing a pretty good that was GMT. Pretty good and fair job. When its managers made some poor decisions, politicians decided that there was no need for a transit authority. They abolished it. This was a very poor decision, one that was uneducated about and poor service. Transit took 40 to 50 steps backwards to almost nothing until GRTA came into being. Let's not repeat with GRTA what was done to GMTA. We are just beginning to move forward. Provide GRTA with the proper support, and it will provide the community with excellent and efficient transportation service. It can do this under the Enabling Act with amendments for procurement and extending contract periods. The proposed task force should work as an advisory committee to work alongside the board. This decision should be made by board in collaboration with the executive manager. The governor should listen to the agency. Let GRTA work with the committee. That is how it should be. Knowing the full history of transit, it makes me more assertive and aggressive to push for issues like this. I real, I really, I rely on the system daily and have done so for the for the past 30 years. Let's stop beating around the bush and fund it. Support it and permit GRTA to do what it is supported to do. United we stand, divided we fall. The reason why it is divided because the funds that belong to the agency are divided out to other agencies of government of Guam. Therefore, we keep saying there is not money, but the money is there. It is just in the wrong pocket. Once again, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate. I hope we continue working collaboratively in seeing these problems move forward to the benefit of the riders and taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Duenas. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to Ms. Ogle. Okay. The OPA has requested if she could go next. Are Ms. Ogle and Mr. Rosario, are you also on schedule?
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, fine. Okay. Okay. All right.
I apologize. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator Ada. I just want us to step back a few minutes and have some lessons learned of what exactly are we procuring. Are we procuring IFB, meaning services, or the bill says this is a request for a proposal, yet the task force is the one to help sit down and design aspects of it. The reason I bring this up is because from a procurement perspective, I would encourage all of you to read the Supreme Court's decision on this very issue of mass transit. And I see that Mr. Kloppenberg was there. His company, together with another company, were the subject of this particular decision. This decision took about 5 years. I can remember it started out with the Department of Administration, and then there was a protest. This was before the enactment of legislation that brought protest to OPA. But long story short, it took a number of years. And that decision I view as truly a landmark decision defining what is an IFB versus what is a request for proposal. Right now, the current situation that we have at Guam Mass Transit, or Guam Regional Transit Authority, is all of the routes, the hours, the times, the pickups are all designed by Guam Regional Transit Authority. And if that is the case, that truly is not a request for a proposal. That is an IFB, because all of the brain power is lodged with the government of Guam. In a request for proposal, you're asking, let's say, a doctor, an auditor, an attorney to render a decision on how best to design this proposal. And this is kind of like, I just want us to think about it for a moment. What do we want? What are we wanting to procure? Because if the government is going to design this routing, how this is going to be, then in essence, it may be viewed more as an IFB as opposed to a request for proposal. Another way of thinking about this is you want to hear from proposers how best to design it and to run it. And so I just want us to step back to that fundamental issue of what does the government of Guam want. because that decision, and I would urge all of you in the task force to read that decision to decide fundamentally, because we're saying we're entering into a new aspect called requests for competitive sealed proposal. And again, the word proposal means what ideas do you have to design this? But if the task force is going to lay out all the parameters, is that truly a proposal as opposed to an invitation for bid? And therefore, will someone protest and appeal, and then it has to go all the way up to the Supreme Court again to decide, is in fact this truly an IFB, meaning we have designed it, all we want you to do is execute it. Or you design it and we have veto power, I guess, or how would be the wording to decide, no, we don't want this, or, again, this is kind of, this has been a very difficult arena. I recognize the complexities, I recognize the problems, but I just want us to think back about that area. What exactly is the government of Guam wanting to procure? And again, the other concern I have, Senator, is the public auditor shall promulgate the regulations as are necessary and appropriate to facilitate this RFCP. Procurement regulations have to go in through a very extended process. The regulations have to be developed. Then it has to have a hearing. Then it has to have a 90-day waiting period. And then if there's no objections, it goes to the legislature. And then we have to wait if the legislature takes no action within 60 days, then they become adopted. And I'm not sure from a time frame point of view, that's my concern here. I think I have not had an opportunity yet to have our legal counsel review this, but I would think that to avoid that delay, we would, however the law is passed, is what will in effect really be the regulations. Regulations are done more to supplement and add to in the event there is certain possible ambiguity and more for clarity. But again, it goes through a very long and deliberative process. And the way this bill is drafted, the committee has to provide something within 45 days and try to, all of this, and it may not be complementary to the time frame. So I just kind of want to raise that particular issue. But just let us go back to that fundamental premise. What is the government of Guam procuring? So that we don't go and have another 5-year appeal process that goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. So again, in closing, I would encourage all of you to read that landmark decision by the Supreme Court that truly define what is an IFB for services versus what is a request for a proposal. The way it is currently operating right now, we are IFB because all of the rules, regulations, and the routing and everything is controlled by the government. All right. I will try to, I'll send you the link. We'll have to research.
Actually,
Okay.
we'll put the Supreme Court decision on the committee's website, and we'll also have it converted to the format that you'll be able to see it for those of you who are, vision impaired. Okay, thank you very much for that. We're going to go ahead and continue then around the table. And thank you very much for those. Those comments certainly were very helpful, and the committee will look at that closer. Okay, Ms. Ogle? Hold on, we'll get you the mic. No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm short, so I have to. Well, anyway, I'm still trying to get familiar with Bill 85. I've been coming to the meetings just observing and putting my opinions together. But, I'm here today because I am a paratransit rider. I'm glad that Doris brought out some stuff within the government, because even though I'm a paratransit rider, I've also had experience volunteering in fleet service, so I also had a chance to learn what actually goes in dispatch. And so from what I feel at this time about the bill, one thing I know positively is that it will be very effective if it does pull through, because we as bus riders need to feel confident that the company who is currently taking us, we are secure, and I believe that the company needs to feel secure in the contract that they do have, as well as the employees. I do believe that in choosing the task force, we need new blood in the system. I've been to many transit meetings, and one person I will bring up that, since I've been within the transit arena in 2004, is Ginger Porter. She's one that, if you guys have anything to investigate or look at, you should ask her, because, she's the one that groups individuals to come to the meeting. I've been in the Transportation Commission, and Evelyn is in it, right, Ev? You were the vice chair? I know they also had a previous task force, but I don't know what happened with that one. And then it became all the way to the GRTA. It's like I've been studying the meetings. By this time we should have already have had a contract, but there's too many back and forth of this waiting game and everything. So this thing all began with Lou Perez, and then Joey Manabusan being deputy, all the way to now. I really think that in moving forward, we really need new faces, because something must not be right with what's going on, because why are we still here today? But I really think in also having this roundtable discussion, it would be helpful if we go section by section, so that we are all within the same page and in tune, and so that everybody can have a chance to answer the certain topic that is being discussed. And also, in case we should move forward, whether this bill is going to pass, or whether we're going to go on proceeding with whatever the biddings, by June. I think we really need to be selective in the employees, and the employees, the drivers, the dispatchers, everything, because Governor Calvo's right. Customer service is very important, and right now that's one of the things that really needs improvement. So I really think that this thing really needs to be looked into, because as a rider, I know that there's a lot of normal problems like bus being late, etc. These are normal things, but I think they are just bigger internal in-house problems that needs to be fixed. And I really believe that there's something going on. That's why we're still here today. And I really just want to see, I just really want to see a movement for improvement so that everybody can move forward and work together and make the system work well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ogo. Now, you made mention about that we should probably do a section by section discussion of the bill, and we will do that. For today's roundtable, though, I wanted it to be basically just a general discussion where everybody can basically provide their inputs. At the next roundtable discussion, we would then make it more structured so that then when we come in, we're going to talk about Section 2 and Section 3, and then everybody would have basically focused on that, and if there's any fixes or adjustments that participants may want to make to those particular sections, we'll fix those, and then we'll move on to the next one. Now, I was hoping actually to be able to introduce or put this bill on the agenda for the May session. That's 2 weeks from now. Right now, based on the inputs that we've gotten from the public hearing, the inputs that I've gotten since the public hearing, I don't think it would be prudent to report it out that soon. What maybe make more sense is to maybe have several more roundtable discussions, and we would have more focused critiques on the bill itself as to how to improve it. But accepting the fact that we are moving in the direction that the bill proposes to enter into a public-private partnership, it's just a question of, do we do it by not touching the authority of the GRTA and all that stuff. Those are the things that we would need to do. But for today, we would basically have general discussions, and as we move on, we'll keep on narrowing it down so that hopefully we can form consensus. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Ogo. Mr. Rosario? Okay.
Good morning, Senators.
Good morning.
My name is Roy Rosario. I'm the Advisory Chair of GRTA. When transit started, it started e-bus, then Guam Mass Transit, then GRTA. We should bring back the waiver right. The reason why we should bring back the waiver right, we can make money. That's how we make money in the waiver right. We're picking up tourists, whoever's out there, or along the street. GRTA can make money. That's how you can bring back the waiver right. When GRTA started, we're not making money. We're not doing nothing. I support 85-33. The way the bill is, there's some portion I don't agree, some I do. Is GRTA's the bill is like being like federal when they first became privatized. It went from federal to Raytheon, then went from Raytheon, went to IME, to Alutech, then went back to IME, went to FFS at Alutech. That's how the day started. That's how we went. I lost my GS-13 pay. As I don't mind I lose it because I wanted to stay back because my parents were sick. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosario. We'll go ahead and hear from Mr. Rick Augustine.
Thank you, Senator Ada and Senator Espadon, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rick Augustine, Executive Manager for GRTA. We had a special board meeting 2 Fridays ago, 8 May, and we weren't able to conclude on what we wanted to do, so we asked for a recess and to go back again on 14 May. However, 14 May, we were preempted because we went on COR 2. And so here we are. Our next board meeting, regular board meeting, is tomorrow. And at that time, we will continue discussing the bill and other matters, and we will provide our written testimony. As the executive manager and working for the board, I am not in the position to say I support or not support. However, there are some questions that have been sent to me by the individual board members, and I'd like to bring them up. One of the issues is that we don't have a full-time attorney general assigned to us. Full-time meaning whether it's there for 8 hours or 4 hours a day. We just don't have one. And the attorney general needs to have, whoever's assigned to us needs to have experience in transit legal issues. A transit PPP is a complicated undertaking and requires specialization to protect both GRTA and the taxpayers. Expert advice. GRTA along with DPW must find federal funding in order to hire expert advice. The PPP involves the construction of public parking garages, installation of ADA compliant bus stops and bus turnoff and cutaways. Those are the special cutaways alongside the street for the bus to enter. And we're also asking the PPP to be able to build bus stations and terminals. The cost of this construction project requires that construction manager must be made available to oversee the completion of the project. Concession to the private partner. An analysis of the value for money must be made to ensure that all parties are treated equitably and that concessions are not to be at the detriment of our taxpayers and future generations of Guamanians. The Office of Public Accountability must be directly involved. They have the staffing and the mission to provide protection to our taxpayers. Should we have the PPP in effect, we need to budget for the initial stages. The government must provide sufficient funds to cover the initial cost of the PPP, since the projected revenue stream from the construction of parking garages, parking meters, promos and ads on buses and bus shelters will not be available at the early stages of the contract. Bus fares must be analyzed and approved through the AAA process in order for those bus fares to be made available to repay the services for the contractors. And lastly, the transit business plan must be fully implemented as written to ensure that the plan is not diluted as it's intended and designed. A fully functioning transit authority must be properly staffed and the right skill sets to be had to be successful and to be performing at the level that meets the expectation of the public. From what I read on the bill, it is too much on the let's do a PPP, but when we're looking at how we're going to make this happen, having the staff to properly enforce the contract, we need the right skill sets. Right now we don't have those. Those are some of our concerns.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Augustine. Mr. Savino?
Senator Ada and Senator Espadon, thank you for allowing me to join you in this roundtable discussion. I basically have about 4 or 5 items of concerns that after reviewing the bill. One of those is the task force deadlines. I'm really concerned about that because I don't know if it's going to conflict with also the FTA deadlines requiring procurement of buses and everything. And the dates for, again, the formulation of the solicitation package, I don't know if we'd be able to meet those deadlines. And the task force members, I'm not even sure they have the capacity and experience to actually formulate a solicitation package to this degree, because it's very, very complicated as we look at all the requirements under the ADA, and especially we want to ensure that we look at the standards for the facilities. Like the director here from GRTA mentioned, there's strict guidelines for the standards for bus shelters and the facilities. And then also working on Section 508 of the Rehab Act dealing with information technology access. We need to really consider that in these proposals. And ensure that the contractor or whoever submits a bid has the capacity to ensure that their websites are accessible and they're compatible with screen readers, and also for people who are deaf, that can't be able to see or hear the information on their website. The other issue I'm concerned about is, as the public auditor concern raised, the IFB or the RFP. That's one of the things I was thinking about, because one of the things mentioned here is the requirement for the legislature's approval, and with most RFPs and IFPs, again, it won't be in effect till the governor signs that, and that's my understanding of these processes, and I need to ensure that, again, we don't conflict with that. And basically, again, for equal access, and I want to make sure that these technical assistance standards that FTA actually has a grant to provide technical assistance in this arena. We really need to consider taking advantage of that opportunity with FTA, because they have the expertise, again, in formulating some of these types of solicitation packages, and we need to contact them and see how they can help out and getting the GRTA board more involved in this process, because again, they're the governing board for GRTA, and I really feel that their input is critical in this arena. And as I look at the composition, they said it was a maximum of 10 members, and I wrote them all down. And then there's also plus nominees from each of these memberships, so it actually exceeds the 10 membership, because we're going to have each of these members nominate 3 additional people. So as I add them all up, it's 3,
I
6,
think
9.
that was for, like, for example, DISIT to nominate 3 candidates from which the governor can select from,
and then
will select one.
Okay,
So each
that
of those
clarifies.
nominating entities, there's 10 of them, and then, of course, we probably would want to add one more to that list, and that is somebody from the financial community.
Great.
And so that would be
That'd be-
in the second draft. We'll be adding to that, but just to clarify.
Okay, good clarification. And that was the last point I was going to make. So we can include somebody who has that expertise in procurement and finance. That would really help.
Correct.
The task force. Thank you.
And of course, insofar as advice on procurement, in the bill, it requires the GSA to be a non-voting member of the task force, basically to provide procurement advice. So they would provide that. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Servino. Mr. Tapasna?
Good morning, Senator.
Morning.
For the record, my name is Ray Tapasna, and I am Governor Calvo's Special Assistant assigned to this project. The governor's office is still reviewing the bill. We're really busy right now with the storm. However, this is a very high priority for Governor Calvo. It has gone on, or the governor has gone on record that he fully supports the intent of Bill 85. However, we have quite a few concerns, and I look forward to going through the bill with this committee line by line. But specifically for this first session, there's a couple of things I want to bring to the table. And the first thing is on section 6305C4, where the bill requires legislative approval. I have a AG opinion here that was provided from the governor's legal team.
What page is that on? Is that the substitute bill?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What page, Steve?
Is it
13?
Or 63, is it 6305C4? And yes, it's on page 13, number 4.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
E4. And basically, this is the provision in the bill that requires legislative approval. And what I have here is an AG opinion, reference DOA 11-0397, and I can provide this to you, Senator. But basically, it's an AG opinion relative to the separation of powers doctrine. So, again, the governor fully supports the intent of this bill. We just want to make sure that once the bill is passed and signed into law, that we don't have any hiccups.
That's right. And on that particular issue, that's a very good point to make. And the legislature, I believe, is well aware that it cannot. It's an executive function to basically come up with the provisions of the contract.
Right.
All the legislature can do is either approve it in whole or disapprove it, but cannot go in there and say, well, no, we think this provision should be changed to this, because then we are getting into the executive function. But it is basically for the legislature to review it. It says, yes, this is a good contract. We also concur, or at least that's the way I understand it. But the point is well made, and
Okay.
we will look at that again.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and provide this to you.
Thank you very much.
The other issue is...
Before you go further on that, did you have the same understanding, Senators?
Yeah, I believe so, but we'll look at the legal issue. When you said you'll provide it to us, is that you'll provide us the AG's opinion?
Yes,
Okay.
it's right there.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
The other issue is, and I recall at the public hearing on the initial bill, you had, Senator Ada, you had mentioned some discussions that you and your staff had with Federal Highway Administration relative to a consultant.
That's right. And I basically put in a query asking what's the possibility of obtaining federal funds from the Federal Highway Administration to be able to hire technical expertise to assist the task force in putting together the solicitation package, and also to assist in the evaluation of the proposals that will be received. I have not yet gotten back a yay or a nay, other than we're running it up the flagpole. But the legislative committee fully recognizes that the task force is going to need that technical expertise to assist it.
Absolutely.
I believe, Mr. Augustine, you've also initiated some communications, and the justification for requesting funding from Federal Highway is that it was Federal Highway that initially funded the study of our transit system, and which ultimately resulted in the transit business plan. And so it seems to make sense that then now the next step is to implement the plan. And so that's what prompted me to ask them. But I believe you indicated, Mr. Augustine, that you've initiated some communications with them?
Yes.
With Federal
we did-
Transit
We
Administration?
did initiate communication with Federal Transit, and they're not opposed to providing funds. The big question is, how much do you need? Because this can take quite amount of money if we're not very specific on what we're asking for.
Right.
So they're basically says, yes, we'll help you. So the next question is, how much do you need? And we have not come to that conclusion yet.
And that's a very good point that you raised, because how much further do we move forward? We may go ahead and pass the bill, get the task force put together, but then until we get that technical expertise, and we don't know how long that's going to take before the FTA. But point well taken, and we'll continue.
Right. And if I may interject, I actually participated in a teleconference with GRTA relative to the discussion on possibly bringing in a technical expert. My concern really is that process in and of itself will probably require a separate competitive process, possibly an RFP. So if you take a look at the timelines that are on this substitute bill, I mean, we need to consider that there may be some delay in bringing in this consultant, whether it be through federal highways or through FTA. So maybe the language in the bill, the clock should start ticking when we actually have this procurement hurdle completed to bring in this technical expert.
Okay. All right, that's a good point.
And the other issue is, and again, I have concerns about, and we'll go through it line by line, but specifically the 30-day timeline for the governor to create the task force is a bit unrealistic, because there's nominations would have to come outside of the executive branch, and we have no control over that. So that, I think, needs to be a consideration. If the governor is given 30 days to create this task force and we're not getting nominations within that 30-day window, then where do we go from there?
Okay, good point.
And finally, as the OPA had raised the Supreme Court ruling, my concern specifically is, in the event there's a protest, that really needs to be a factor in terms of the timelines. You know, we have 30 days for the governor to create this task force, 45 days for AG review, 45 days for this and that. However, once there's a protest, all bets are off.
I think, and admittedly, when the bill was being put together, that was probably one of those red flags that was put up and says, okay, if all things being equal and the world was perfect and everybody got up in the morning at the same time and did what they're supposed to do, then maybe these timelines will work. Mm-hmm. But I also, you're basically confirming the doubts that I admittedly had, that you know, when you don't have full control of things, to be able to say you have 45 days to do this thing, it may not be realistic. And so we will be taking that back to the drawing board to see then how we can, you know, provide the parameters that we want things. We need to get things done really now, without, you know, trying to draw that line in the sand that says you have 45 days or the world falls apart. And that's going to be a matter of crafting that language.
Mr. Chair, if I may also, I believe that if there is a protest that is filed, then I think the timelines become full, much like in a court case that's brought before the court. Then basically any timelines that are required by a bill like this or a law like this would be full at such time the issue is resolved.
Right. Mr. Augustine?
I just want to make sure that we protect the integrity of the procurement process. When we have 11 task members, 15 senators, the board, myself, procurement have been protested because of the process. How do we ensure that everybody is put on this special task force and you don't say anything to anybody until this thing is completely presented to the governor or the legislature? There'll be issues with people knowing people in business, and they just have coffee, and before you know it, they say something they shouldn't. So when we impanel these people and we create the task force to actually look through this, that there are some very strict guidance on what they can or cannot do or what they cannot say, because otherwise that's another red flag for a procurement stay.
That's a very good point, and you know, the procurement process alone could be like a minefield. Okay.
In response to that, maybe we could do similar to what is done in some autonomous agencies like the airport, where everyone on the task force would have to sign off on a non-disclosure document. and we could probably request that information from the airport. They have these standard forms.
Okay.
And finally, one other issue, and it has to do with the GovGuam responsibilities, and I'm not certain whether that was changed on the substitute bill. But basically, my concern is it feasible to expect the government of Guam to include autonomous agencies to agree to provide to the private partner access to land, facilities, and equipment under its control as needed to support public transit. Some agencies, such as the port or the airport, may have to violate their bond covenants, federal guidelines or regulations. So that's something I think really needs to, the language in there needs to be revisited.
May I just ask, Mr. Chair, could you just restate that concern, Mr. Boston? Whether it's feasible for autonomous agencies to be involved?
Well, whether the law can require a government of Guam agency to provide access to their properties, to their equipment, to their facilities. And I'll give an example. I mean, if the task force were determined that a certain real estate up at the airport is required for public transit, would the airport be required to give up that piece of land, whether it's through a lease agreement or whatever? Are they statutorily required to do that? And would they be in violation of their bond covenants?
Okay, well, it's certainly a very valid point, and we certainly, I know that we could not pass a law that would require somebody else to break their own covenants and whatnot, but that's a very good point, and I think the language, at least in my writing of the bill, that certainly was not contemplated, but obviously if that sort of interpretation or concern is being raised, then I think that points to the fact that the language probably needs to be better written to remove that sort of vagueness.
Okay.
All right.
And I think when we go line by line, we can actually
Right. Okay.
collaboratively improve on the language. But
Yeah.
that's it for now.
Okay. Well, thanks. Those were very good points, and we'll certainly take these and incorporate it into the bill. Well, take a look at how then we could address these concerns in the bill, and then at the next round table, the committee can come back and say, okay, here's how we propose to address the concern about the task force deadlines, etc., and whatnot. Okay. I guess Senator Spaldon left. Does anybody have any other concerns that you might want to raise? Hold on a second, please. Hold on. Yes, ma'am.
Why is it that everyone, including, what is the actual purpose for transportation to go into a private partnership system? Because, as I stated earlier, that really didn't, and I'm not speaking just for me in general, but everybody, including myself, looked at it as within the government of Guam, subcontracting the service would save the government of Guam money. And not just in transit alone, but in other areas that I see within the government of Guam, they subcontract their service to somebody else, but it initially doesn't improve or make progress, from my understanding. And take the Department of Education's school cafeteria. The schools have cafeteria for purpose, but yet those things are subcontracted out. The government pays more and more to do that. Where did it save that department money? It didn't. It spread out, begging, pleading, and I remember that when I was active. It was never stabilized. So my key question to this committee and the entire government of Guam that looks at this as a saving money channel is, where does it save? Where does it save? Because it's actually costing more than what we used to have when transit was just run with transit alone. Like I said, Senator, and I have nothing against anybody, whether the provider or the legislature or the government alone. We went from 30 plus in transit system to 15 to 11. We're dragging at 11 right now. There's no stability. When we were at 30, there was stability. It had an office, it had staff, it had everything it needed. When it went down to 15, it started going smaller and smaller. Problems got bigger. My view is I saw it more efficient when it had 30 plus vehicles on the road versus now that we only have 11 plus 2. It's not doing anybody a purpose. This system is nearly giving everyone a huge obstacle as well as a barrier. Most especially the ones who rely on it. The agency who oversees it. Really, we need to come to something to stabilize this. We keep going through this. We'll work on it fine, but time is of essence here. Transportation keeps sinking every day. The provider tries very well to do what they need to do. But sometimes everybody's hands are tied, not just them, not just GRTA, not just the government as a whole. But this process really took place after the abolishment of GMTA. Then we went into litigation with this whole thing. It never came out of its hole. It never did. When GRTA was brought up, we're thinking, okay, this is going to smooth it out. It did for a few months. But then after that, it went back to square one. When and why and where are we going to fix this? We're the smallest. Everybody looks at Hawaii. We want to be like Hawaii. We can't. We're not even halfway there. Every day that I wake up to do what I need to do, it's a burden on my end to get up and deal with what I have to deal with on transportation. All I'm asking, and everyone probably, I don't know, I'm not going to put a note in for that, is a reliable transportation and more accountability to it. That's all I ask for. It was done before, it can be done again. The problem will always be money for any agency in Guam. Will always be. That's why I ask, again, I have no problem with politics, but sometimes we need to pull it back to let things work. So I ask you, please, I know there's frustration on your end, and I see that every day, not just on transportation, but even for me. There's frustration on me every day on transportation. I'll tell you, just Saturday, I was left at again shopping center by the bus. And considering that that was the day we just went into condition 4 after the storm, I was the only passenger out. The one after the last one on the PM shift. I was the only one left. They refused to send a bus back. Why? Because I missed the ride. Well, let me tell you, and I'm not complaining this here, but this is an example. That is a small problem that practically anybody can fix. It doesn't have to go through anywhere else. But it became a huge problem to the point where I had to demand dispatch. And I shouldn't do that. But because they indicated that I missed my ride, although I gave them notification that I'll be out in 10 minutes, they still left. Was the respect there? No, it wasn't there. Did I have alternatives to call to get me home? No, I didn't. I had to find my way through, advocate my way through to get a ride home. So again, all I ask is let's situate transportation to where it needs to be so everyone who deals with it can be at ease, including everyone around this table. It's been a mess since it went this way. And it's still a mess. We have people that are, including you, Senator, diligently trying to work with it. But every time we smooth it out, it goes into rough terrain. Back to square one. Bring it to where it needs to be. Provide the funding that it needs, and let them fly for a year and take it from there. Because it's just too much already to absorb, especially people who rely on it. It's a burden to the individuals who are able-bodied dealing with this every day. That's how I see that.
Okay, Ms. Duenas. Well, from that discourse, there's a lot of things that we can agree on. I think everybody around this table certainly wants to see the system fixed up. Wants to see the system fixed up so that it can provide reliable services to everyone. I think everybody will agree that it's going to need more money to fix it. For example, we're trying to provide services with 11 buses. Some of them are 20 years old, way over their service life.
They are older than we are in this room.
But to buy new buses, that contractor is also going to need time assurance that he will have enough time to be able to recoup his investment. We're going to need to give it more money because, as you said, with 11 buses, we're not going to be able to provide the level of service that is needed. When the study alone that was done in 2008 indicated that we're probably looking more at 50 buses. So we can agree on all those things. Where we differ is how do we approach that. And so that's what Bill 85 is. It's thrown something out there. Now we've got to see how we can close the gap so that we can all agree on an approach to this particular issue. I will say this one. I disagree that continuing as we have done in the past 2 decades is not going to be the answer. I don't know that we can continue to, for example, receive federal grant money, what was it, 6 years ago, to buy buses, and it wasn't until just now that we're putting out a solicitation for that. It shouldn't take that long. So if you recall, I gave a talk at a conference, and I said that if we're going to improve the GRTA, we're going to have to go off the beaten path and doing things as we have been doing in the past 2 decades, I don't believe is going to do it. So, but the important thing is that we agree on really the more fundamental and important issues. Okay. Did you have something, Mr. Tabasa?
Yeah, may I close with one more thing? The OPA raised the issue regarding whether we want to go through an RFP or request for competitive sale proposal process or an invitation for bid. And that's contingent upon whether a GRTA identifies or has more to say in terms of what the routes are and stuff like that. My concern has to do with, let me see. Whether the public-private partner may want to only operate profitable routes. And so that, of course, the PPP would want to have a lot to say in terms of what routes that would be. So the entire bill appears to be focused on an RFP or a request for competitive seal proposal. But if we went that route, then again, going back to what I said earlier, the PPP may want to just operate profitable routes, and that could be problematic moving forward. Mm-hmm. So that's something to think about.
And I think what you're referring to is what is normally referred to as cherry picking. We only want the good profitable routes. Everybody else, give the non-profitable routes, and that certainly is not going to work. But that's a good point you raised. Senator, did you have anything? No. Rick? Ben? Okay. We did say that this roundtable, we were going to put a specific time on it, and it started at 9. It was going to end at 11. We're going to go ahead and end this round of the roundtable discussions, and at the next meeting that we'll schedule it at the same time, and we will then be more focused in our discussion in terms of going section by section, and we'll select certain sections for that round table so that everybody would have had a chance to really drill down on it and start then being able to discuss how do we fix this section so that we can get consensus. Yes, Mr. Rosario. Okay. And I noticed the bus is here. Are you? Yes. Okay. So yeah, and Ray.
Yeah. Before the next roundtable meeting, would we have a revised substitute bill again, or?
Yes, and you will have a revised substitute bill well in advance of the next roundtable, so you would have had a chance to review the proposed changes to the next draft, and when we come to the table, we're all talking on the same sheet of music. Okay. All right. With that, then we'll go ahead and adjourn this roundtable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
All right.